The morning light gathered slowly over the pasture, pale and thin, as though the sun were still unsure whether to rise. Frost clung to each blade of dry winter grass, turning the field into a muted expanse of soft silver. The fence that once bordered the pasture had long since begun to sag and break with age, its rails warped and weathered by years of sun, rain, and the weight of time. On one of the fallen rails, where the wood bowed toward the ground in a gentle curve, a hawk perched, still, watchful, composed. Its feathers were layered in shades of tawny brown and pale cream, with darker markings folded neatly along its wings. The hawk's talons gripped the rail without effort, the wood worn smooth beneath them. The bird's eyes were bright, deep, and unblinking, fixed on the pasture below not in hunger, but in attention. The world was quiet, the kind of quiet that did not feel empty but full of breath held, of waiting that was neither tense nor expectant. A cold breeze moved through the field, combing through the grass and stirring the loose strands of an abandoned hay bale nearby. The hawk did not move. Its feathers rippled slightly, then settled again. Beyond the pasture, the farmhouse chimney offered a faint thread of smoke, barely visible in the still air. Someone was awake, perhaps stirring embers to life, but no footsteps crossed the yard, and no door opened. The pasture seemed to hold itself steady, preserving the pause of morning. A single black cow, older and slow-moving, stood near the fence line but did not graze. Its breath rose in soft white clouds that drifted and disappeared. The hawk turned its head slightly, not sharply, but with the slow, deliberate motion of something that sees without haste. It listened. A field mouse moved beneath the dry grass, weaving a narrow path near the roots of weeds. The hawk heard it, not the sound itself, but the faint disturbance of the world that happens when one life moves through it. Still, it did not move. Hunger existed, but it was patient. It had learned the rhythms of the pasture. When the mice traveled, when the shadows shifted, when the land offered opportunity rather than demanded effort, the pasture remained quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after many winters, after fields have been worked and rested and worked again. The hawk's breath did not show in the cold. Its gaze remained steady. Time passed slowly, measured only in light shifting across frost. And the pasture, wide and open and held by the gentle weight of stillness, kept its quiet breath, untouched, unbroken. The light in the pasture changed gradually, though no warmth came with it. The weak winter sun remained veiled behind high, pale cloud, offering only brightness without heat. Frost softened, but did not melt. The hawk remained on the fallen rail, feathers shifting just slightly as the breeze changed direction. It did not fidget or search with restless hunger. Instead, it observed, the way creatures that survive winter learn to observe, patiently, without wasting motion. Below, the grass lay stiff and pale, bowing under the weight of the frost that coated each blade in a thin crystalline shell. A small sparrow hopped from one tuft of grass to another, pecking at frozen seeds, its movements light, almost nervous. The hawk did not regard it as prey. The sparrow was too small, too quick, and hunger had not sharpened to the point where every motion must be answered. The cow near the fence line shifted its weight and exhaled, its breath rising in slow white plumes that hung in the cool air before fading. The earth beneath the hawk seemed to hold a memory of sound, the echo of hooves in warmer seasons, the rustle of grass in summer wind, distant voices calling cattle in for milking. But none of that belonged to today. Today was quiet in a way that felt whole. The farmhouse door opened once, releasing a faint trail of warmth and the distant clink of a pail. But the sound never reached the pasture fully. It softened, thinned, and disappeared before it could disturb the lingering stillness. The hawk's gaze shifted slowly to the far side of the field, where a tangle of brush formed a low, uneven line between pasture and wood. There, beneath the dried stems and frost-strung twigs, something moved. Not fast, not recklessly. A mouse or perhaps a vole testing the edge of open ground. The hawk lowered its body just slightly, not enough to appear poised to strike, but enough to acknowledge the moment. It listened longer than it watched. The creature beneath the grass froze, sensing the weight of attention in the air. though it could not see the hawk directly. And then, as if the field exhaled again, the creature withdrew, retreating into the warmth of its tunnel beneath the frost. The hawk did not react, did not tilt its wings or tighten its grip. The time was not right. The pasture was patient, the hawk was patient, and so the moment passed, like a wave that rose and smoothed out without breaking. A distant crow called once from the roof of the barn, its cry flat and singular. The hawk turned its head toward the sound, then away again. Nothing more was required. The day continued, unhurried, and the pasture held its quiet breath still. The day continued its slow unfolding, each minute stretching thin like mist, dispersing across the pasture. The hawk remained on the fallen fence rail, unmoving except for the subtle rise and fall of breath beneath its feathers. The frost that had gleamed earlier began to dull as the light shifted from morning toward afternoon, though the air stayed cold enough that nothing melted, nothing softened into mud or wet earth. The grass remained stiff, pale, and silent. A distant line of bare sycamores stood at the far edge of the pasture, their branches tracing fine, intricate patterns against the pale sky, like bones held to light. Beyond them, the faint outline of distant hills slept in a gray haze. The hawk's gaze swept the field, though not in searching, more like absorbing. It saw everything the way old trees feel wind, without needing to respond. Beneath the frost-crusted weeds near the pasture's edge, a vole began to dig again, this time more boldly. The hawk heard it, not with ears alone, but in the way a predator senses disturbance, vibration, the subtle misalignment of stillness. But again, the hawk did not move. Hunger had not become command. The day did not require action. It only required endurance, attention, ease. A deep quiet settled around the pasture, the kind that happens only when even the smallest creatures decide to remain still at the same time. The cow lay down near the fence, folding itself into the dry grass as though settling into an old memory. A single leaf, brown, curled, fragile as old paper, lifted and drifted a short distance along the ground, nudged by a faint breeze. The hawk's head turned slightly to follow its movement, not because it mattered, but because everything mattered in a world with no waste. A farmhouse dog barked once, sharp and far away, then fell silent. A door shut, a bucket clattered softly, then even those settled back into quiet. The hawk blinked, slowly, deliberately. The pasture held its breath again. The light now thinned into a softer gray, the kind of afternoon that does not feel like the middle of the day, but like the long approach to evening. Yet the sun had not lowered. It had simply hidden itself further behind cloud. Shadows were faint, blurred things. The hawk shifted its talons slightly on the rail, the only real movement it had made in more than an hour. Frost, stirred by the weight of motion, loosened and fell in a tiny cascade of silent crystals. The pasture, in response, did not flinch. It simply continued, steady and unremarkable, as though the world was content to rest in a pause that had no origin and no end. The hawk finally lifted its head higher and opened its wings, slowly, as though testing the air rather than preparing to fly. The wings stretched wide, revealing layers of feathers shaped for silence and control. The hawk held that position for a moment, letting the wind touch the surface of its body, feeling its strength, its cold, its direction. Then, it folded its wings again, settling back onto the rail. Not time yet. The moment had come close, but not close enough. The hawk knew, the way animals know without thinking, that the pasture would offer what it needed eventually. Movement always returns. Hunger always finds an answer. Winter life was not urgency. Winter life was timing. And the pasture, quiet and open and patient, waited right alongside the hawk, both held in the same unbroken breath. The slow afternoon deepened toward the kind of light that does not feel like evening yet, but no longer belongs today. A softened gray that stretches evenly across sky, field, wood, and fence, so that nothing casts a strong shadow anymore, and everything seems held in the same quiet layer of time. The hawk remained on the fallen rail, still as carved wood, its feathers settling with the steadiness of something that had learned long ago how to conserve every ounce of movement and every breath. The pasture around it lay open and still, the frost dull now, no longer gleaming but retaining the cold firmness that suggested it would not shift for many hours yet. The cow near the fence remained resting, eyes half closed, chewing slowly in a slow rhythm shaped not by hunger, but by habit, an ancient grounded patience. The hawk watched, not alert, not tense, but present, as if watching were simply a form of breathing. A breeze moved through the field, so faint it bent only the tallest dead stems of grass, and the hawk's feathers responded with the smallest whisper of sound, a soft tightening and release. A crow flew overhead, low and unhurried, crossing the pasture with slow wing beats, shifting the air with quiet authority. The hawk did not follow its flight. The crow was not threat or challenge, simply another life moving through the same cold day. The crow passed beyond the far fence line and disappeared behind the low hill where the barn roof lay, dull red beneath the muted winter sky. Time stretched further. The hawk tilted its head slightly, listening downward, the way a creature born to hunt listens, not for noise, but for the disturbance of stillness. Beneath the pale grass, beneath the frost and thin layer of snow, a mouse had emerged once more to dig. A small shift, not enough to demand action. Not yet. The hawk's talons tightened just enough to feel the grain of the wood beneath them. The old fence rail creaked faintly, not from the hawk's weight, but from the cold, inside the wood expanding and settling. The sound was soft, hollow, and old. The pasture answered with stillness. The farmhouse remained quiet. The dog did not bark. No cart rolled along the road. No voices crossed the open land. Even the distant trees seemed to have stopped moving, their branches holding still against the dimming light. The world did not fall asleep. It simply paused, as though storing its breath somewhere deep in the roots of the land. The hawk's eyes, sharp and calm, reflected the gray sky but returned no brightness. They were deep enough to hold the entire pasture in them, and quiet enough to let it remain undisturbed. Hunger stirred gently. It was not sharp but present, a slow pull rather than a command. The hawk did not ignore it, nor did it rush to answer it. Winter does not reward haste. Winter teaches the art of exact moments. To move too soon was waste. To move too late was loss. So the hawk waited, perfectly still, yet completely awake, held in the same breath as the pasture around it. The cow rose once, shifting its great weight with slow, resigned grace, then took a few heavy steps to stand nearer the fence. Its hooves pressed shallow marks into the snow. The hawk watched the movement, unthreatened, uninterested. The cow breathed out a long plume of white that dissolved in the cooling air. Then all was still again. The light faded a little more, though the sun had not set. It had simply withdrawn another step behind the veil of cloud. The sky became one continuous tone, seamless with the field. The hawk lifted its wings slightly, feeling the air again, then lowered them. Not yet. The moment hovered close, but not here. The pasture held its quiet breath. And the hawk, perched on the old fallen rail, remained part of that breath, unbroken, unmoved, present in the stillness that needed no reason and no story beyond itself. The light thinned further as the day leaned toward evening, though the change was so gentle that it felt less like time passing and more like the world softly adjusting its weight. The hawk still perched on the fallen fence rail, and the pasture around it remained wide and open, holding its silence the way snow holds light. The air cooled by small degrees, not sharply, not suddenly, but with the patient steadiness of winter's long breath. The frost that had dulled under the weak daylight now began to firm again, regaining the faintest glimmer where the clouds allowed the pale sun to show its outline. The hawk shifted once, lifting its weight just enough to resettle its talons, and then became still again. Hunger pulsed now, not fierce, not desperate, but steady, like a quiet knocking on a door that has not yet been opened. Beneath the grass, the mouse moved again, this time traveling a little farther from the sheltering tangle of roots. The hawk heard it, the way one hears a familiar phrase spoken softly in the next room. The pasture's silence did not break. The mouse did not hurry. The hawk did not tense. The moment had not yet sharpened. The day was not done. A faint breeze brushed across the pasture, thin and dry, stirring the grass just enough to suggest movement where there was nearly none. The hawk raised its head slightly and opened its wings. Not wide, only enough to feel the air moving over the feathers, to know the shape and weight of it. The wings held there for a long, slow moment, the way a hand holds still in water to feel the current. Then, the hawk folded them again with the same unhurried grace. The sky deepened into a clearer gray, the distant line of hills fading into soft silhouettes. The cow now stood completely still, watching nothing, as though half asleep while standing. The barn roof beyond the rise of land remained silent. No one walked outside. No door opened. No smoke changed direction. The world did not end, and it did not move. It simply stayed. And the hawk stayed with it. The mouse beneath the frost shifted again. Not close, not far. Just there, living its tiny life. The hawk's gaze lowered, eyes narrowing a fraction. Not tightening, just refining. Hunger now was not a voice, but a direction. The pasture itself seemed to hold its breath with more intention, the silence becoming not emptiness, but concentration. The hawk leaned forward slightly, muscles gathering without tension. Still no rush, still no strike. It listened. It waited. One more moment, one more breath. Winter hunting is not a matter of speed alone. It is the art of recognizing the exact alignment of stillness and movement. The mouse pushed a few grains of pale dirt aside. That was enough. The hawk moved. Not swiftly, not explosively, simply with the clean inevitability of something that had always known the shape of this action. Wings opened, broad and silent, air caught and held, snow lifted in a faint whisper. The hawk dropped from the fence rail, like a falling shadow, and swept across the short distance of field with no effort visible. A single stroke of wings, a single curve of motion. The land did not startle. The cow did not lift its head. The world did not shatter. It was the kind of movement that belonged so deeply to the field that it did not disturb the stillness. It fulfilled it. A soft impact into grass, a silence within silence. Then, stillness again. The hawk stood now on the ground, wings folded, head low. The movement had been completed, not celebrated. The pasture accepted it without reaction. The sky remained pale. The air remained cold. The day continued slipping toward evening, unbroken, unhurried. The hawk lifted off again, slow and steady, returning to the fallen rail with the same composure it had left with. Its talons settled, its feathers smoothed, its breath remained even. The pasture exhaled. Nothing had changed, and everything had.